Have you ever caught yourself saying, I think I've lost myself? I've heard people say that after a divorce, after leaving a job, after becoming a parent, after years of putting everyone else first. And every time I hear someone say it, I have the same question. Did you play hide and seek with yourself or something? No, seriously, I know that was a little bit too far, but how do you know you were lost? What they usually mean is, I'm not the person I thought I'll be by now. There's a difference. And I think that's where we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe the goal isn't finding yourself. Maybe the goal is understanding why you become someone you no longer recognize. Because I think we spend far too much time arguing with the symptom and not enough time questioning the story we've been telling ourselves. Today, I want to challenge that story. There was a season in my life where I'll come home from work exhausted. I'll tell myself, I've had a long day. You know what? I deserve to relax. So I'll sit down. I'll scroll through my phone for a while. When that got boring, I'll turn on the television and start flipping through the channels, looking for something to watch. One episode became another. 1 hour became three. Before I knew it, I'll look at the clock and think, well, time to go to bed. Then I'll wake up the next morning and do it all over again. But here's what made it worse. While I was watching other people entertain me, I was also watching other people build businesses, write books, launch YouTube channels, launch podcasts, speak on stages, change their life. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I wish that was me. For a long time, I convinced myself I was stuck. I convinced myself I had somehow lost who I was. But the truth was much harder to accept. Wasn't lost. I was becoming exactly who my daily choices were training me to become. Nobody was stealing my evenings. Nobody was stopping me from writing. Nobody was stopping me from recording. And nobody was stopping me from building the future I kept talking about. I wasn't missing time. I was spending it. And the way I spent it was producing the life I had. That realization, it just hit me like a punch to the stomach. Because I realized something Jim Rome talked about years ago. People will tell you they don't have an hour to work on their dream, but somehow, some way, they find 3 hours to watch television. I've lived it. So I'm not standing here throwing stones at you. I'm standing here admitting that I used to be one of those people. Then one day I stopped asking, where did I lose myself? And I started asking a different question. What kind of person are my daily decisions creating? That question alone changed everything for me. Here's a reflection, family. That realization forced me to make a change, not overnight, not all at once. I simply started becoming more intentional about what I was feeding my mind. Instead of spending every free moment consuming entertainment, I began spending more time listening to books, podcasts, people who challenge me to actually think a little bit different. Now, if I could just be transparent with you, I still enjoy watching entertaining content. Okay, who doesn't? I'm not sitting here telling you I never watched television or even scrolled through social media because that wouldn't be true. The difference is that entertainment stopped becoming my default. It became something I chose instead of something that quietly consumed my evenings. More importantly, I stopped believing that listening alone was enough because you can listen to 100 podcasts, read 50 books, watch every motivational video on YouTube, and still never become the person you claim you want to be. Knowledge can change the way you think, but execution alone changes who you become. Here's something that helped me. Instead of trying to replace 3 hours of entertainment overnight, I created a better ratio, maybe 20 minutes of reading, 10 pages of a book, writing one paragraph, recording one short episode. Then I could still enjoy an episode of my favorite show. Why? Because growth isn't built through perfection, it's built through progress. Think about a baby. Baby doesn't come into the world and immediately just take off and start running. They first learn to lift their head, then they crawl, then they wobble through their first few steps. Eventually, they figure out how to run. Growth has always been progressive. So why do we expect our personal growth to happen overnight? Don't compare your first step to someone else's 1,000 step. Just take the next step because every step you take is another vote for the person you're becoming. Principle number one, you are not lost. You're disconnected from the person you keep imagining. I don't believe people wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm suddenly losing myself. What really happens is they create a version or a vision of who they want to become: a leader, entrepreneur, a healthier person, a better parent, a confident speaker, A project manager who finally gets the opportunity they've been praying for, then months, sometimes years, and one day they realize my life doesn't look anything like the picture I've been carrying around in my head. Well, that hurts. Not because you're lost, because you became aware of the gap between who you imagine and who your habits have been creating. Here's the lesson I want you to think about, family. You don't feel lost because you don't know who you are. You feel lost because your daily actions no longer match the future you're imagining. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, stop writing goals. Start writing identities. Ask yourself, who am I trying to become? Second, compare that identity to your calendar from the last 7 days. Hey, listen, real quick, no judgment. And you shouldn't judge yourself. But to discover whether your schedule is introducing you to that person or keeping you away from meeting that actual person. Here's my professional advice. The greatest breakthrough I've experienced and the ones I've seen in leaders that I've worked with didn't begin with better planning. They began with brutal honesty. So if you're feeling lost, isn't really about losing yourself. It is actually about becoming disconnected from the person you keep imagining. The next question becomes, how does this happen? It doesn't happen because of one big decision. It happens because of hundreds of small ones. Because whether we realize it or not, our habit always introducing us to our future. Let's talk about that. Principle number two, your habits are introducing you to your future. Every habit is making an introduction every morning, every evening, every decision. That question isn't, what kind of future do I want? The better question is, what kind of future are my habits introducing me to? Because your habits don't care about your intentions. They only respond to repetition. Every action casts a vote. And eventually, the person receiving the most votes, well, it actually becomes your reality. Here's the lesson I want you to think about, family. Your future isn't created by your wishes, it's introduced by your routines. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, identify one habit that quietly introducing you to a future you don't want. Second, replace it with one habit that introduces you to the person you're trying to become. Don't try to rebuild your entire life in a week or a day. Just change one introduction. Here's my professional advice. Transformation doesn't happen because you changed everything. It happens because you stop repeatedly practicing the wrong identity. Now, maybe you're listening and thinking, ED, I get it. My habits haven't been serving me. That's an important realization. But awareness alone doesn't change your life. Once you recognize you've been practicing the wrong habits, who do you become next? Principle number three, stop trying to remember who you were and start building who you're becoming. This is the problem, the biggest shift I've had to make. People tell me, I just want to get back to the old me. My question is, why? Who decided the old version of you was supposed to be your final version? Maybe the old version got you here, but maybe the next version is the one capable of taking you where you really want to grow. Growth isn't about returning. It's about becoming, not becoming someone fake, becoming someone stronger, more disciplined, more courageous, more intentional. That version of you, your future has actually been waiting for. Here's a lesson I want you to think about, family. Your future doesn't need the old version of you. It needs the version that hasn't been built yet. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. First, start asking this question. Who does my future require me to become? Second, every night ask yourself one question. What evidence did I create today that supports that identity? Not what you intended, not what you planned. What evidence did you create today? Here's my professional advice, family. Identity isn't something you discover, it is something you earn from evidence. Here's my final reflection. As I've reflected on this conversation, I don't think most people are actually searching for themselves. I think they're searching for evidence that they're becoming the person they've always believed they could be. That's why the ideal of being lost can feel so overwhelming. Not because you disappear, but because somewhere along the way, your daily habits stop supporting the future you kept imagining. That's encouraging news, I think. No, I know. See, if your habits had the power to build a version of you that you're frustrated with today, they also have the power to build a version of you you're hoping to become tomorrow. That means your story isn't finished. It's still being written, one decision, one habit, one courageous action at a time. So The next time you catch yourself saying, I think I've lost myself, I hope you'll remember this conversation today. Maybe you didn't lose yourself. Maybe you simply been practicing becoming someone you never intended to become. And if that's true, you can begin practicing something different today. Here's my closing thought. When you think about losing yourself, you also have to ask yourself, how can I find myself? And it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's a continuous learning type of approach. You have the decision, not the choice. You have to make the decision not to give up on yourself, to keep moving forward, regardless of the outcomes. And it's not easy. I wish I could tell you it was easy, because if it was easy, everyone would do it. And this is why we fall into that trap of telling ourselves that story of, hey, I'm just losing myself. But you also can find yourself, because your future isn't waiting for you to find yourself, it's waiting for you to build yourself up again. If this episode challenged the way you've been thinking, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you don't remember anything else about this episode, I really need you to remember this one thing. Stop arguing with the symptom and start questioning the story you've been telling yourself. I truly believe that's where the transformation begins. That's in reps beat talent when talent doesn't do the reps. If you're new to the episode, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, hey, listen, that just simply means Ed. Until next time.